Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Param Sparijakacharya Astatar Sasatsi Madhi Sivange Sesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Anand Koti Vaishnavind Ki Jai Prem Se Bolo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrind Ki Jai Sri Radha Govind Ji Ki Jai Sri Radha Shyam Sundar Krishna Balaram Lalita Visakha Sri Gaur Nitai Bhagavan Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samved Bhakta Vrind Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the Sangha devotees. All glories to the Sangha devotees. All glories to the Sangha devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. So today, we are reading Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, text 18 and 19. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 618. Yadā viniyataṁ cittam ātmany evāvatiṣṭhate nispṛhaḥ sarva-kāmebhyo yukta iti ucyate tadā. Yadā viniyataṁ cittam ātmany evāvatiṣṭhate nispṛhaḥ sarva-kāmebhyo yukta iti ucyate tadā. Yadā viniyataṁ cittam ātmany evāvatiṣṭhate nispṛhaḥ sarva-kāmebhyo yukta iti ucyate tadā. Synonyms, word by word. Yadā, when. Viniyataṁ, particularly discipline. Cittam, the mind and its activities. Ātmany, in the transcendence. Eva, certainly. Evāvatiṣṭhate, becoming situated. Nispṛhaḥ, devoid of desire. Sarva, for all kinds of. Kāmebhyo, material sense gratification. Yukta, well situated in yoga. Iti, thus. Ucyate, it is said to be. Tadā, at that time. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The translation first. When the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. Purport. The activities of yogi are distinguished from those of an ordinary person by his characteristic cessation from all kinds of material desires, of which sex is the chief. A perfect yogi is so well disciplined in the activities of the mind that he can no longer be disturbed by any kind of material desire. The perfectional stage automatically be attained by persons in Krishna consciousness, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 9:4-18-20. Savai manah Krishna padaravindayor vachamsi vaikuntha gunanuvarnane karo harer mandira marjanadisu srutim chakara chutta sat kathodye mukunda lingalaya darsane tad bhutya gatra sparse angasangamam granam cha tatpada saroja saurabhe srimat tulasya rasanam tat arpite pado hare kshetra padānusarpane siro rishi kesa padabhivandane kamam cha dasye ta natu kama kamyaya yathotma shloka janasrayat rati. So, Srila Prabhupada is giving explanation here that King Ambrish first of all engaged his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Prabhupada has selected a very nice example here, highlighting Ambrish's activities, Maharaj Ambrish's activities. It's interesting to see here that instead of focusing on Dhyan Yoga and giving examples of Dhyan yogis, like maybe the four Kumaras or the Rishis, Prabhupada is focusing in exactly the opposite direction by highlighting a great devotee like Maharaj Ambrish, so that it is beneficial for us as devotees to see how important Bhakti Yoga is as opposed to Dhyan Yoga. King Ambrish, first of all, engaged his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Then one after another, he engaged his words in describing the transcendental qualities of the Lord, his hands in mopping the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing the activities of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the transcendental form of the Lord, his body in touching the bodies of the devotees, his sense of smell, in smelling the scents of the lotus flowers offered to the Lord. His tongue is in testing the tulsi leaf offered at the lotus feet of the Lord. His legs in going to places of pilgrimage and the temple of the Lord. His head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his eyes, his desires in executing the mission of the Lord. All these transcendental activities are quite befitting a pure devotee. So after stating how every sense and of the body is engaged, Prabhupada stresses here that all these transcendental activities are quite befitting a pure devotee. So often we say purity is a force, and this is why Srila Prabhupada is stressing the importance of becoming a pure devotee. This transcendental stage may be inexpressible subjectively by the followers of the impersonalist path, but it becomes very easy and practical for a person in Krishna consciousness, as is apparent in the above description of the engagement of Maharaj Amrish. Unless the mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord by constant remembrance, such transcendental engagements are not practical. In the devotional service of the Lord, therefore, these prescribed activities are called archana, or engaging in all the senses in the service of the Lord. The senses and the mind require engagement. Simple abnegation is not practical. I repeat that. The senses and mind require engagements. Simple abnegation is not practical. Therefore, for people in general, especially those who are not in renounced order of life, transcendental engagement of the senses and the mind as described above is the perfect process of transcendental achievement, which is called yukta in the Bhagavad Gita. So we go on to the next one, text 19. Yathā dīpo nivāta-stho neṅgate sopamā smṛtā yogino yata-cittasya yuñjato yogam ātmanaḥ. So I'll just do the translation and purport here. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist whose mind is controlled remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendent self. Purport: a truly conscious, Krishna conscious person, always absorbed in transcendence, in constant undisturbed meditation on his worshipable Lord, is as steady as a lamp in a windless place. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Praschata Desatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is a nice sloka here, and nice explanation Srila Prabhupada has given, and he's chosen a very, very ideal example. And the way I see it and the way I felt and heard from Srila Prabhupada in some of the other lectures that I was listening to. I listen to on average like 6 lectures a day since I've been on COVID, so I have more time. So I listen to Srila Prabhupada as often as possible. And it's very nice to listen to Prabhupada because there's a lot of realization. So here we are looking at Dhyana Yoga versus Bhakti Yoga. I say versus Bhakti Yoga because we are Bhakti Yogis, and here Lord Krishna is describing Dhyana Yoga in details, and what it requires to be a Dhyana Yogi. But we are more interested in being practical and seeing what is practical for us and what is the proper process whereby we can actually, achieve bhakti and please Guru and Gauranga at the same time, so that we can avoid this cycle of samsara life, being born and having to die again and again. So we try to see how best it can be done, because this is not Satyuga where we have 100,000 years to live and maybe we can experiment for 50,000 years. This is Kali Yuga. We don't even have 100 years to live. On average, it's supposed to be 100 years, but it's said that because we end up indulging ourselves in so many activities which we shouldn't be, or overindulging in activities that we shouldn't be, therefore our lifespan is reduced. According to Manu Smṛtā, it's described that we have an X number of breaths that we come in with into this life. So if we exhaust our breaths, well ahead of time, then we end up living a shorter period of life. So here, the way to see in practical terms the difference between Dhyana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga is that, like, we can see, for example, one person who's standing on the Dhyana Yoga side, he is looking at the ingredients of a cake or a candy, or maybe some favorite food stuff that you like. So you look at the ingredients. And then on the other side of the wall, there's a person who's eating the cake, is relishing the cake and is blissful. So you can either, you have a choice. You can keep on looking at the ingredients. You can keep on varying the ingredients to make it more exciting. And day in and day out, day after day, you can continue doing that. Or day after day, you can enjoy eating the cake. You can vary it. There's no harm in varying the ingredients, but you cook, bake it, make it, and then you eat it and you relish it. So that's the difference, that ashwadana is important, testing is important. Why it's important? Because unless you test, how will you relish? And unless you relish, how are you going to be blissful? How can we become blissful unless we are relishing something? So for example, in Dhyana Yoga, there is like 8 steps to achieve success in Dhyana Yoga. The first one is yama. Yama means all the don'ts. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other thing, And then there is niyama. That means there are do's. So you must do this, you must do that, and you must do the other things. And this third step is asana, how to control the body. Body control is required. Unless you can control your body, you cannot take the next few steps. So that is one of the do's. That means body must be controlled, and don't let the body come out of control. Pranayam, the next step. And that is like controlling the breath. We know the famous pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj. Narad Muni had given him instructions, eating leaves for 6 months. Right? That was a do. And then don't breathe. He was guided that, like, then you should stop breathing altogether, become completely transcendental to having to breathe. So, and when he did that, the entire universe was in trouble. So, that takes a lot of tapasya. It's not easy. We try not to breathe for a few moments. Right now the COVID is going on, and breathing has become a big problem for the victims of COVID. Almost everyone who gets COVID, they closely monitor your temperature and they closely monitor your oxygen level. And because without oxygen, you can't breathe properly. And even if you have oxygen, sometimes you can't breathe properly because there is, challenges, bodily challenges. This virus is very tricky. So from that, we can see how difficult it must be, to go in the path of Dhyana Yoga if you're going to have to learn to control your breath, Right? And then there is Pratyahara, full control over internal senses. Full control over internal senses. Many personalities have tried to do that in the form of yoga. Like a typical example of Sabri Rishi, 60,000 years underwater. Just imagine 60,000 years underwater, and then he sees two fishes mating, and that was it. That was the end of his tapasya. His tapasya was broken. Then he wanted to get married. So here in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is stressing that the activities of the yogi are distinguished from those of an ordinary person by his characteristic cessation from all kinds of material desires, of which sex is the chief one. So we can understand why Srila Prabhupada is stressing a typical, extreme example of Sabri Rishi. That having performed tapasya and having controlled his senses for so many years, it was difficult for him to continue controlling his senses. Just because he saw, two fishes, not even two human beings. So from that we can understand how difficult this path is. And then dhyan, unwavering concentration. How we're going to have absolute concentration, no deviation at all. And dharana, matured state of concentration. So initially you practice, once you go on to the sixth stage and you practice how to control your senses so that mind is completely under control, then only you come to the matured state of concentration. And then finally samadhi. Samadhi is the perfection of Dhyana Yoga. Now what is the perfection of Dhyana Yoga? We can discuss that a little later on. But these are the 8 steps of Dhyana Yoga. And in Kali Yuga, it's very, very difficult. We can try, to control the mind even for 6 minutes. What about 60,000 years? It's a challenge. However, Bhakti Yoga is a process by which all of the above are just naturally taken care of by the Supreme Lord. We don't have to do any of the above. There are parallels, but the parallels are in so much more practical way that we are able to follow. We are able to practice Bhakti Yoga in such a way that the Dhyana Yoga, processes are taken care of, and at the same time, we do not have to perform unnecessary tapasya. Bhakti Yoga, just by one of the practices, one of the noble of the practices, one of the 9 processes of bhakti, we can actually achieve success. Whereas in Dhyana Yoga, you have to go step by step and everything has to be there. Whereas in Bhakti Yoga, like Prahlad Maharaj, simply by chanting the holy name, he didn't have to practice all 9 processes. When you had Venkar Bhatta, he was doing service to the deities simply by doing, attentive and focused service to the deities. He was at a stage whereby he could actually talk to the deities, and he was also at a stage whereby he was so advanced that Lord Chaitanya was compelled to go and spend time with him several months, and uplift him, to Madhurya Bhav, Yeah, he was talking to the deities. He had relationship with the deities, but his relationship was at Ishwarya level Bhav, and then the Lord became very, very, very loving and compassionate towards him, and then he took him to the Madhurya Bhav level. So, Hanumanji was doing so much seva, personal service, like Vaishnava seva, and that is another example. Then we have Parikshit Maharaj, Sravanam, simply by hearing for the 7 days non-stop. He was drinking the nectar so nicely that he didn't feel hungry or thirsty for 7 days and night. He didn't have to perform Dhyana Yoga. It was just simple, very simple process of Sravana. So by doing that, he was able to attain, Golok Dham. So Shruti, or the Vedic rhymes or the slokas that we get in the literatures are very, very important for us. Shruti is actually the knowledge that is coming to us from the Lord himself, or indirectly from the Lord, is not purusha, it's apurusha. Apurusha means that it is transcendental. It is from beyond the material universe. So, and then there is also the slokas or the shrutis have to be understood via proper guidance. A proper guidance is required from realized souls, realized personalities. What it means is that if we are not careful and we end up going to an impersonalist, we could end up in the wrong zone. Whereas if we go to somebody like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and the Parampara, then we'll get to understand the Sabda Shastra properly, and that will help us to relish. Again, if we end up on the impersonalist path, then we end up thinking that everything is one at the end of the day. That is how they look at. They think we are God and everything is one. Whereas we know that everything is not one. Only God is one. There is only one God, and all other living entities are part and parcel of that Supreme Personality. So Prabhupada, in one of his lectures, he says that impersonalists are offenders, and he says it like 3 times, and I heard it this morning. And then he says, why? He says, because they do not accept the form of the Lord. He said, how can you not accept the form of the Lord? That means you do not acknowledge that there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And not acknowledging the Supreme Lord is also an offense. It's a big offense, he says. It's a disrespect to think that there is no Lord. And the Shrutis, they also explain that the Lord and his qualities are transcendental, not material, it's divine. It's another aspect to understand that, the Supreme Lord is, Prabhupada gives the example of Nilkamal. Nilkamal is like a blue lotus flower. So you cannot separate Nil from Kamal. It's said like saying you cannot separate from color from the flower. If you say, take the Nil part away, it is just flower. But because it's blue, then you call it a blue lotus. So likewise, the Lord's forms, qualities, pastimes, all these qualities of the Lord are part and parcel of the Lord. They're not different. They're transcendental. They cannot be separated from the Lord, Supreme Lord. It's not like us. We are jivas. We are jivas who are living inside a body. The Lord is swagat bheda rahit. Swagat rahit means that his body and soul are not different. Whereas human beings are bheda. Bheda means that we are jivas living inside a body and we are separate. So this is something that we understand from the Shrutis. The Shrutis, they utilize Sabda Shastras. It's like 4 aspects, different aspects of the Sabda or the language, that Shrutis utilize, so that it gives us a more clear understanding. It gives us an opportunity to understand, why eating the cake is more relishing than just looking at the ingredients of the cake, like that, So the first part of the aspect of the language is abhida. Abhida means direct, It's like in certain aspects, there is a direct explanation. Like, for example, that is a cow. So cow is a cow, that's a cow. So that is abhida. And then there's lakshana. Lakshana means it's indirect. For example, when we're talking, then we can say that his house is in the Yamuna, or his house is on the Ganges. So it doesn't mean that the house is inside the river. What we often use a metaphor like that to say that, yes, his house is along the bank of the river Yamuna or along the bank of Ganga. So that's Lakshana. And then there's the gunas. Gunas are the qualities, So a phrase that is given is like, used to explain guna is that the student is a lion. It doesn't mean the student is actually a lion. You know, is he really a lion? No, he's not. But it is again a phrase that is utilized to emphasize and give importance to the student that, this is a very brave student. He is very sincere in his endeavors, like that. And then that is tatparya. Tatparya is, the prominent aspect of the Shruti that is being given to us. That's why Srila Prabhupada also gives purports. Srila Prabhupada gives us purports on literally every text as much as possible. Sometimes we club some of the text together because the texts flow into each other, and then he gives a purport. But he gives a purport. And if you notice and realize that we see that Prabhupada's purports are always, very elaborate. Prabhupada is doing his best to give it to us in the simplest form possible, because we are Vedas, we are jivas living in a cocoon called the body. And we don't have that level of intelligence, and we are living Kali Yuga, so we are short-lived, short-minded, short knowledge, short everything. So Prabhupada has gone out of his way to give us so much understanding after every text, every possible situation, so that we can understand all these differences and the importances, and he's given us so much literature. Just like in this particular text, he is explaining how Amrish Maharaj, is engaging every sense and every part of his body is engaged, in service to the Lord. Like he says, first of all, his mind is engaged on the lotus feet of Krishna. First of all. So he's guiding us here how the mind should be focused on Krishna, not just his whole form, but he's saying start by focusing on Krishna's lotus feet. In other words, start by paying obeisances, start by surrendering yourself, so that you can become humble and focus on your bhakti, on the path of bhakti. Then he says, one after another, he engages words in describing the transcendental qualities of the Lord. See how specific he is that, like, describing the transcendental qualities of the Lord. And then when he goes on to hands, he gives an example, hands in mopping the temple of the Lord. Could have just said hands in mopping or cleaning, but he's saying the temple of the Lord. He's stressing so much that everything should be connected to Krishna in his service. His ears in hearing the activities of the Lord. Again, hearing the activities of the Lord. His eyes in seeing the transcendental form of the Lord. His body in touching the bodies of the devotees. His sense of smell in smelling the scents of the lotus flowers offered to the Lord. Again, he doesn't say just Maha flowers. He could have said smelling Maha flowers, but he's stressing it. He's making it very clear so that, when we hear how everything is connected to the Lord, then we will naturally become connected to the Lord, provided we do sarva-kāmebhyo sincerely. His tongue in the testing the tulsi leaves offered at the lotus feet of the Lord. His legs in going to places of pilgrimage and the temple of the Lord. Again, he could have said just going on pilgrimage, but he's saying no, to the temples of the Lord. And finally, he's saying that his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in executing the mission of the Lord. And then Prabhupada concludes by saying all these transcendental activities are quite befitting a pure devotee. So I stressed on the importance of a pure devotee. So whereas the Dhyana yogis, if the Dhyana yogis or other forms of yoga, they try to seize the activity of the mind. The mind ultimately goes out of the picture. Whereas in Bhakti Yoga, we engage the mind because mind is the king, sense object. Is controlling all the senses. And that is of great importance. An example that's given is like, how important the mind is, and a crude example is given like that if you have a thorn in your feet, you have, several resolutions, but two resolutions are given. One is saying, well, you got a thorn in your feet, so cut your foot off. That is what you would do if you didn't have the mind in action. That's what the Dhyana yogis would do, because they try to freeze the mind altogether. Whereas in Bhakti Yoga, like Prabhupada says many times, that you use your higher intelligence. We use our higher intelligence to see, okay, there's a challenge here, and we engage the mind that, okay, this is a problem, so we have to pull the thorn out. And if the thorn is made of metal, then you need to get an injection. If it's wood, it may be some antiseptic or something that you take care of. You use your intelligence, and utilize your mind to do the activity. So this is how much there is a difference. Dhyana yoga is mostly dependent on dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. And samadhi. That means try and forget everything, and just be completely fixed in your dhyana. Whereas in Bhakti Yoga, we have so many opportunities, so many different opportunities that we can select any one of the 9 processes and go for it. And in Bhakti Yoga, the very first step is that we understand the sambandh, that we understand that, our goal is to please Radha and Krishna through the guidance of the spiritual master. Sanatana Goswami was an ideal example who established the Madan Mohan temple. And Madan Mohan temple is known to be the Sambandha temple. So Sanatana Goswami's teachings and the instructions he received from Lord Chaitanya, they are all there and helping us to establish that we have a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have relationship with Radha and Krishna, and how we can establish that relationship. And then Rupa Goswami, who established Radha Govindji temple, he teaches us the process of Vidya. In other words, what is the process? Now we know that we are related to Radha and Krishna. We know that we are related, to the spiritual master, and by the mercy of the spiritual master, we can get the mercy of the Supreme Lord. So what is the process? So then we follow the process. Srila Prabhupada has been very kind to us in describing the process of bhakti in Kali Yuga, how Lord Chaitanya's teachings are taken into serious consideration, and we follow those instructions and guidelines given to us, especially in Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? And then Raghunath Bhatt was very lucky because Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami established, the Sambandha and Avideya for him. So he took us all, or he took the teachings and put them into practice and went up to Prayojana. Prayojana means that establishing the ultimate goal of human life. And what is that? That is Krishna Prema. And how do we get Krishna Prema? Again, Srila Prabhupada has given us so much instructions, guidance, morning program, chanting the holy name, preaching is essence, and so on and so forth. We learned so much from Srila Prabhupada, and he has given us do's and don'ts. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Antyalila, in chapter 6, he is giving us first the don'ts, and one of the don'ts is that Gramya Katha na sunibe, Gramya Varta na kahibe. Bhala na khaibe ara, bhala na paribe. Gramya katha sunibe, gramya varta na khaibe. Bhala na khaibe ara, bhala na paribe. So what does it mean? Do not talk like people in general or hear what they say. You should not eat very palatable food, nor should you dress very nicely. A very important instruction that Raghunath Bhatt is receiving, by Lord Chaitanya. And this is that Gramya Katha means Prajalpa, that like everyone's talking about each other and this person that and another person that, So Prabhupada says that anything that is not Krishna Katha is Gramya Katha. So he is warning us that be very, very sensitive, be very, very careful in not getting involved in Gramya Katha. And then furthermore, here Lord Chaitanya is saying, Bhala na khaibe, ahara bhala na paribe. That means don't not just overeat. Prabhupada has emphasized on not overeating. He often say that eat half as much as you think you should be eating. So if you eat you think you should eat 4 chapatis, just eat 2. But here, Lord Chaitanya is also stressing on palatable foods. Oh, I like this and I like that. Oh, it's a great feast. I must go eat. I must overeat. And whenever there is a great feast, the tendency is to overeat. So are we sensitive to that? And then also, bhalana parive, that don't dress too nicely. When we dress ourselves or overdress ourselves, we try to look, extra smart or extra beautiful or extra handsome. It's like almost competing with the Supreme Lord. The only personality that we should be seen very, very beautifully dressed is the deity, other deities. Like Radha Shyam Sundar, Krishna Balaram, Gaurnita. We see every day when we take darshan, they're so nicely dressed. There's so much, effort goes into dressing them so nicely. Why? Because also in Golok Dham, that's what Radharani is doing. That's what the gopis are doing. That's what the manjaris are doing. They're all doing service to Krishna and Radha to dress them up nicely. When we start dressing ourselves up nicely, then there is a high tendency that we completely put focus entirely on ourselves and we forget what the real goal of life is. So it's very, very vital aspect. This is given in Chaitanya Charitamrita in the Antya Lila, not in the Adi Lila, Madhya Lila. Towards the end, this is Lord Chaitanya giving such important guidelines for us. And then he says in the next verse that Amani manada hana Krishna nama sada laibe Raje Radha Krishna seva manasa karibe. Do not expect honor, but offer all respect to others. Amani means that don't expect honor to be given to you. Be humble. Humility is a process. Humility means that a person who does not require, does not expect, and does not want any form of glorification. Not that humility is that somebody smacks you on and you say, oh, it's okay, he was angry, so hit me, so now I'm humble. No, and then and offering all respect to others. How do we do that? When it's easy to offer respects to the deities when you come in front of the lordships for darshan. Everyone's paying obeisances, so we also pay. It's easy to come to Guru Puja and pay obeisances to Prabhupada and to the Guru Parampara, like that, and everyone is doing that also. Or how do you pay offers to people who antagonize you, or people who disrespect you, or people who you are inimical to, or who are inimical to you? Because here it's saying offer respects to everyone, all others. So one time there was a couple who came to Srila Prabhupada, and there was always some conflict of respecting each other. So Prabhupada told them that, you know what, every morning you as husband and wife, when you get up, first thing you do is respect each other by paying obeisances to each other. And then he said, before you go to sleep, also you must do that you pay obeisances to each other. And he said to the man that because you are a man, you have a difficulty. They said you should not have difficulty, because within the temple of your wife, there is also the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you start by paying obeisances to the Paramatma seated within her heart, and then very soon you will be able to respect her, and vice versa, she will respect you. In order to earn respect, we also have to give respect. Unless we give respect, how will we receive respect? Respect, we shouldn't be wanting according to this sloka, but if we show by example that we respect others, then naturally respect will come to us. And then if we receive respects, we should be very careful not to get all excited or get our ego puffed up. Then we should be grateful to Krishna and say that whatever is coming my way, all this respect and all these offerings in my position, then I offer it to your lotus feet, to the spiritual master. Because nothing belongs to us. We shouldn't think that this belongs to me. oh, this is my greatness, that's why I'm receiving so much respect. And then he's saying here, Lord Chaitanya is saying, Braje Radha Krishna Seva Manasa Karibe. That always chant the holy name of the Lord Krishna, and within your mind render service to Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. See, the point I kind of picked up here is that when he's saying within your mind, render service to Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. So this is also of great importance, that living in Vrindavan is important, but even more important than living in Vrindavan is that you are concentrating your mind on Radha and Krishna. Because if you are living in Vrindavan and your mind is not focused on Radha Shyamsundar, then it's a loss. Because if we are not focused on the lotus feet of the Lord, we're not focused on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then our mind is going to be flickering in so many other directions, Then where is the question of Anta-kāle-ca māmeva smaran, muktavā-kalevram? How will we remember Krishna at the end of life? And if we practice and we learn to think of Krishna all the time, or we learn to think of Radha Shyamsundar all the time, then what will happen is no matter where we are, we'll be Vrindavan, because Radha and Krishna will be with us. We will be carrying them in our mind. The only thing or only thoughts that we should be carrying with our mind, within our mind is, that Radha and Krishna. We should be thinking, okay, what is that Krishna did today? For example, today is actually the day, according to the Vaishnava calendar, is the day when Krishna killed Kamsa. Today, Kamsa was killed by Krishna. So we should be thinking, oh, wow, this is a great day when all the atrocities, done by Kamsa came to end because of the mercy of the Lord. Krishna came and finally put him in his place. So this way we should be thinking all the time, how, what, where, everything in relation to Krishna. In Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says, Seva sadhaka rupena siddha rupena chatrahi tad bhava lipsu na karya vraja lokanu sarata. In the transcendental realm of Braj-dham, one should serve the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, with a feeling similar to that of his associates. And one should place himself under the direct guidance of a particular associate of Krishna and should follow in his footsteps. So, Rupa Goswami is giving a very simple and direct guidance here. In other words, don't follow your mind, but follow an associate of Krishna. This method is applicable both in the stage of sadhana, that is, spiritual practice is executed while in the stage of bondage, and in the stage of sadhya, God realization. When one is a Siddha Purusa or a spiritual perfect soul. And I'm reading this from Nectar of Instruction, text 8. And then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur goes on to comment on this, and he says, he has commented as follows upon this verse. One who has not yet developed interest in Krishna consciousness should give up all material motives and train his mind by following the progressive regulative principles, namely chanting and remembering Krishna and his name, form, qualities, pastimes, and so forth. In this way, after developing a taste for such things, one should try to live in Vrindavan and pass his time constantly remembering Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, and qualities under the direction and protection of an expert devotee. This is the sum and substance of all instructions regarding the cultivation of devotional service. So here Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj is also stressing on taste. Not just taste for eating cake and Mahaprasad. It's good to have that taste, but he's stressing that how important it is that one should live in Vrindavan and pass his time constantly remembering Krishna's name, fames, pastimes, and qualities. Because when we remember them constantly, and every time we remember him again and again and again, then we'll get a deeper and a higher realization, which will bring joy in our life, bring happiness in our life. Just like when we do Damodara-āśtakam prayers, in the fourth sloka of now Damodara-āśtakam prayers, they said, "My Lord, I only want to remember you in this form. I don't want anything else. I don't want to know about Vaikuntha Dham. I don't want to know about everything else that goes with it. All I want to do is, if I can remember you in this form, with your beautiful eyes, lotus eyes, and your stance, and how beautiful you are. If I could remember you like this in every moment of my life, every breath of my life, that's all I want. Why is Vaishnava is able to say something like that? Is because that Vaishnava is relishing Krishna in that form. Krishna's pastimes in that forms. As a coward boy. Yeah. So this bhakti yoga is a great science. It's a great process whereby we can relish every moment of our life, um, and make progress in our spiritual uh, practices. So anybody has any questions at this time? We have like think about 5-6 minutes. You can unmute and ask a question if you want to.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yes. So I had one question that came on the Facebook Live. It's a little bit of a general question.
Yes, Mother.
Okay. This is from Mahima Sachdev. Prabhuji, I have one question. I used to read Bhagavad Gita, and Bhagavad Gita gives me proper guidance about life. But how I will meet Adhyatmic Guru? Please give some more clarity. He wants to know how to meet the Guru.
Nice question. And that is, just the thought of it is the beginning of your spiritual life. Athatu Brahma Jigyasa. That means when you come up with the intelligent questions, then that is the beginning of your spiritual life. So generally, if we pray, if you're reading Bhagavad Gita and you pray to the Supreme Lord that I do sincerely want to understand you, I do sincerely want to surrender to you, and I do sincerely want guidance. I want some devotee who can guide me nicely. Then Krishna will arrange for you one way or another. It's just like Srila Prabhupada. He went to this lecture and then he didn't know that was going to be a spiritual master. He wasn't even thinking, but Krishna was so kind that he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. It was his prarabdha. Krishna has already arranged for every jivatma. He's arranged not one opportunity, but many opportunities. And the opportunities for you to meet gurus will come since you're desiring. And then as you come across spiritual masters or gurus, in ISKCON we have many gurus. So as you come across gurus, then it's at that stage you have to see, or you have to see who is the personality who's making you think most of Krishna and Krishna consciousness and bhakti, and who's inspiring you. You can even ask them questions that you may have, or doubts that you may have about Krishna consciousness and path of bhakti. And then the person who guides you the best and who inspires you the best, and every time you hear the lecture of that person, or every time you ask a question and then that person helps you to come to a realization, you really feel blissful, then that will be an indication that that is the spiritual master that you should be heading towards. So that's my understanding. ISKCON, we have so many gurus, and you can go on the YouTube and you can click and listen to different spiritual masters lectures, and you will certainly click with one of the spiritual. I'm no doubt every spiritual master's lectures will be very transcendental and you'll relish them, but at certain stage, a certain spiritual master's lecture and certain statements that the spiritual master will make will really click with you, and you'll feel that yes, this is the person who should be my spiritual master. Generally, when people come and ask me, I have these 2 spiritual masters I'm inclined to, or 3 spiritual masters I'm inclined to, then I will encourage them that you associate with them, you ask them the questions that you want to ask, and as you interact with them, you'll come to a realization who is your spiritual master. Krishna from within your heart then will guide you. So I will pray to Krishna for you. I'll pray to Guru and Gauranga for you, that you find a spiritual master who will really inspire you and make your life blissful, and make your process on the path of bhakti very blissful also. Hare Krishna. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Prabhu. Okay,
Hare
does
Krishna.
anyone else have any comments or questions? You can unmute and ask.
So path of bhakti is very profound. It's just like Maharaj Indradumna became an elephant. And then even in the form of an elephant, he was able to chant mantras. Why he was able to chant mantras? Basically because in his previous life as a king, his daily routine, in his sadhana bhakti, he used to chant those slokas and offer the chanting of those slokas to Lord Narayan. So that was something that he was able to carry on into his next life. Although he was cursed because of his ignorance. Angira Rishi cursed him basically because when Angira Rishi came, Indradumna Maharaj was aware, but he did not stand up, and did not pay respect because he thought his meditation was more important. So that was an offense. So he was cursed and he became a king of the elephants. But even in that form, he was able to remember the Supreme Lord, and then he was able to chant at most crucial time of his life. And that helped him, to be freed. So even in an animal body, you can still be connected to the Supreme Lord. What to speak of the human body, So we should use this human body as wisely as possible, because it's a great opportunity for us to be freed from the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease, and come again and again and suffer again and again. Why can't we be blissful again and again? It's like Bhakti Charat Swami in one of his lectures was saying that he was glorifying Nandarani, and he was saying that when we go to sleep and when we wake up in the morning, we wake up in the same body. And we don't cry about it, that why I woke up in the same body. When you go to sleep, you're looking forward to taking good rest, and if next day something exciting is happening, you get even more excited when you rise, and you rise early and jump around. But then he said, a spiritualist who's advanced, when he goes to sleep and death takes over, then he wakes up in a spiritual body. But we have to be trained and be ready to wake up in a spiritual body. If we follow the path of bhakti, we follow the process that's given to us, then we will not be afraid of death. If death comes, then we know we'll wake up in the spiritual body. So there's nothing to fear. Just as much as we look forward to waking up in the material body, if we have the transcendental knowledge and understanding, then the next morning, if you wake up in a spiritual body, there's nothing to cry about. You can only be very happy that finally now I've got my spiritual body. I don't have to suffer anymore. I don't have to sleep every day. I don't have to live in fear in this crazy material world. So this science is just unique, Just take full advantage of it. Go for it. Srila Prabhupada went out of his way to give it to us. He was so merciful, So let's be merciful to others and let's be merciful to ourselves also. Thank you so much, Mataji, for giving me this opportunity. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Any comments, Devananda Prabhu? You've unmuted yourself. Do you want to say something?
Nothing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Okay. So we had a thank you from Mahima Sachdev saying it will help him a lot. He appreciates your answer.
Thank you, Mother. Thank you, Mahima. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.